My name is Doevenspeck. I'm a political geographer at the University of Bayreuth, which means I'm studying the political dimension of space and the spaces of politics. I have a special focus on migration, conflict, violent conflict, and border studies. And we're doing research in West Africa and in Central Africa, especially in the borderlands between Rwanda, Uganda, and the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Within the cluster Africa Multiple, I'm the deputy head of PIXAS, our graduate school, and the spokesperson of the research section Mobilities. The project I want to present today is migration control, forced immobility, and violent mobilization in the border triangle of Burkina Faso, Benin, and Niger. This project ran for only 1 year and is now more or less completed. But I think this is important. We try to integrate more African colleagues into this project at a very early stage, and including Dr. Serge Noël Ouedraogo from the African Cluster Center in Ouagadougou in Burkina Faso. And it is Serge Ouedraogo who has now submitted a new project proposal in collaboration with us to hopefully continue our work from September 2021 on. And at this point, I must state very explicitly that my friend and former PIXAS doctoral student Kamal Donko from Benin should actually be standing here today to report on the project. But he is just finishing the last field research and could not take over. But everything I can say here about our results is based on his work. And it's also based on the work of Aboubakary Imoro. He's a professor of social anthropology at the University of Abomey-Calavi in Benin, and of Dr. Daouda Traoré from the National Center of Scientific Research in Burkina Faso. Daouda is a sociolinguist and also a PIXAS alumni. And like almost everyone here in Bayreuth, I was not able to do field research due to the pandemic. Okay, since a couple of years, activists and scholars describe how investment in border infrastructure in West Africa, such as fences, biometric identification machines, and enforced military control, has become one of the pillars of European migration control in West Africa. Most of the studies published so far have analyzed the impact of the extension of Europe's border into the Sahel regionally or nationally. In this project, we analyze the impacts at a local level, especially at the border posts of Kanchari in Burkina Faso and Makalondi in Niger. These two border posts have become two of the main targets of international investment for migration control. At the same time, it is in this borderland where violent attacks on security forces have increased dramatically. We aim to understand who prevents the mobility of borderlanders and migrants, what effects do biometric control technologies have on regional economies and on the power relations between those who control and those who are controlled. At the same time, we want to know how people subvert those interventions of immobilization. How do people cope with this? And how do they navigate these new immobility regimes? And how is the increasing violence in the borderlands linked to migration control? And to answer these questions, my colleagues did many interviews, observed the interaction between travelers, migrants, and border officials and security forces. They assessed reports from local level meetings, strategy papers, media articles, and internet sources, as well as reports of organizations involved in migration and security issues in the region. Yeah, let me summarize our results under 3 different but interlinked points. The first is what we call the criminalization of travel. The country border post is run by immigration officers and policemen that were trained by the International Organization of Migration. The post was equipped with sophisticated technologies such as border management information system with the so-called Migration Information and Data Analysis System, MIDAS. The post cooperated closely with Frontex, the European Border Agency. And the officers, for instance, consulted the EU-funded a central database WAPIS, the West Africa Police Information System, where all collected fingerprints, for example, can be found and are matched with those of Interpol, which means for people under suspicion of heading to Europe, the journey often ended here. But even before the border post itself, travelers experience restrictive controls and harassment on their way to Kanchari. There are 13 to 15 checkpoints of the gendarmerie and the military lined up over a distance of about 400 kilometers, where travelers without valid documents are searched and charged fines. Travelers without Burkinabe passports are charged fees even if they have valid documents from their home country. People who are classified as candidats à la migration, it's French, means candidates of migration, are particularly harassed the closer they get to the border. Also, under the ECOWAS protocol, the ECOWAS is the Economic Community of West African States, the ECOWAS protocol on free movement of people and goods, these people are actually allowed to move freely from Burkina Faso to Niger. The second point is what we call poverty is back, the impact on the local economy. The journey of travelers from Gambia, from Cote d'Ivoire, from Senegal, from Mali, from Ghana, for example, had led to a vibrant migration economy in Kanchari since 2014. This not only attracted businessmen and traders from outside the region, but also benefited the local population who opened hotels, shops and restaurants. They served as mediators between border officials and migrants and brought them across the border on their motorbikes. This migration-based economy brought relief from otherwise very limited economic and agricultural opportunities in the region around Kanchari. After the implementation of migration control in 2018, hotels were closed, restaurants, bars, shops went bankrupt. More than 80% of the region's economy was related to migration. Since the administration collected taxes from the various actors involved in the migration economy, more than 70% of the budget, the regional budget, was essentially based on taxes from migration. The current financial gap threatens the functioning of local administration in the entire region. And the desperation about how this has again, now I quote the people, plunged everyone into poverty, has also strengthened local militias. Responses to migration are getting increasingly violent, which brings me to our third point. The third point, we call it violent borderlands. There are many reasons of and many drivers for violence, and of course we do not claim that migration control is the most important or even the only explanation for armed conflict and also for the terrible security situation in the region, but it does contribute to a deeper understanding of the current situation. Timed with the introduction of the new border management measures in 2018, violent attacks have spread rapidly to the east of Burkina Faso. As the security forces try to contain the violence, attacks against state institutions, but also churches, as well as kidnapping and criminal attacks, especially against the mining companies, increase. It can be assumed that the loss of income from the migration economy, whether from the transport of migrants, from brokerage, or from plundering the migrants, as well as from informal cross-border trade in general, could not be compensated for and has enlarged and diversified the spectrum of non-state armed actors in this border region. To give you a striking example, in April last year, a non-identified armed man attacked and destroyed the Kanchari border post. Everything that was not looted went up in flames, including the entire technological investment in migration control. Okay, I think our contribution to the cluster's agenda is quite obvious. We analyzed to what extent forced immobility through new security practices relates to violent political mobilization and constitutes an unexpected outcome of European migration control in West Africa. Thinking borders relationally means to understand them as networks, networked spaces of relations. We show how complex multiple dynamics of power that are involved in the practices of bordering are related to political processes and on various scales, so linking the very local to global ideas of border management and migration control. You understand the violent borderlands as being constituted in and through such multi-directional relations between new and existing practices of border management, mobility control, and struggles and resistances, relations between people, ideas, and infrastructures. And by studying the processes by which so-called irregular migrants or human traffickers or armed actors, violent actors, are made through relational practices, we show that migration control is not a discrete given entity. Carefully attending to the subaltern geopolitics of uneven practices and spaces of mobility and immobility and resistance allows us to understand better how Europe is situated in Africa, and in turn how Africa and Africans are situated in the world. My personal vision for research in the cluster is that we work on scientific questions that are relevant to the people in Africa in completely new forms of cooperation between the University of Bayreuth and colleagues in Africa. Questions that are strategically ignored in Europe, such as the effects of the European desire to prevent migration of Africans already in Africa.